did is it was not just focusing on the customer-facing or the business-related activities. It was right across the entire enterprise. It was enterprise-wide transformation agenda that we embarked on, which included support functions like finance, the entire credit stream, including the process of appraising a credit to actually giving the cash to the customer. So the time to cash, that entire journey, how do you digitize that? Operations, HR. So the entire company is going through a digital transformation as we speak. And the path that we followed, or the discipline that we followed, was it was based on 4 pillars. One was connectivity, and what we mean by that is how do we ensure that we are able to make ourselves as a bank accessible to our customers 24/7, beyond the traditional banking channels of branches or a call center or an ATM. So how do we soup up our entire multi-channel capabilities in the form of omni-channel? We have just a month ago, we launched our AI-powered virtual assistant, which basically helps our customer pretty much do almost 90% of what they typically come to a bank on a self-service mode. We also invested in some of the core kernels of a bank from a technology perspective, i.e. in tokenization technology. We have got that act together. Actually, we were the first bank in Qatar to offer Apple Pay in April. We also launched wearable pay in Feb of this year. We've also invested in point-of-sale technology, which is not just the hardware-based, but also an electronically capable way of closing transactions at the point of sale. We have also investing quite heavily in digitizing or making our branches smart by not just the traditional ATM machines, but pretty much doing most of the typical vanilla transaction that a customer gets done through a branch. And there is more to come. Actually, our partnership with Qatar FinTech has been quite helpful. And we have been with them for the last 12 months now. We have had multiple rounds, which gives us an opportunity to basically look at what is happening in the wider world from a fintech and a technology perspective. And it's sort of curated for what a bank or a finance industry needs. And then we have been cherry picking what we need and how does it align with our own larger agenda with respect to digitization. So lots happening in Dukhan Bank. Please watch this space.
A huge variety of offerings at Dukhan Bank. And you mentioned Qatar FinTech. Let's go to Mr. Hassan. Regulators play a key role when it comes to fintechs in a country. What support are you seeing from Qatar Central Bank? Are there any challenges that you're facing?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Narayan and Shahid. Yes, Dukhan Bank has been a really good partner of the FinTech Hub over the last 18 months. So let's talk about regulators. I think globally, regulators are under a lot of pressure, irrespective of them being in emerging markets or developed markets. And I think there are 3 key areas why they are under so much pressure, which we have not seen historically. Number 1 is the pace of innovation, which is happening in the market. The pace is so rapid, where fintechs like Dipsys and others are bombarding the sector with the new technology, and the regulators are just playing catch up. Whether it's digital assets or innovation in the space of credit, like buy now, pay later, or crowd lending, it's always that the regulator is playing catch up. So I think that's one thing. The second is the emergence of investors like us, like retail investors. Historically, if you see, it was the institutional investors which were driving the market, the capital markets, and they were setting the direction. But now retail investors have been dominating the market for the last 2 years. And the last thing is the demand which is coming from people for decentralization. So that's why you see things like Bitcoin and crypto being so successful over the last 3 years, because people do not want to be under the umbrella of central banks. They want to have decentralized networks where they are not controlled by central banks. So I think these are the main reasons why central banks and regulators are under so much pressure. Coming to QCB, I think they have been playing a very important role over the last 2 years with the setup of a separate fintech department within QCB. That was really helpful. In my role, I run the Qatar FinTech Hub, and I work very closely with QCB and obviously Hank at QFC, where we work closely with them in understanding what are the upcoming market trends, where do we need regulations, and where do we need support. For instance, in the last 2 months, they have launched the PSP regulation, and now I know they have started accepting applications, which is a very good sign for the Qatari market. So yeah, in short, regulators are under a lot of pressure. QCB is doing a very good job. However, obviously, there's a lot to be done in the next 2-3 years.
And just staying on the subject of Mr. Henkel, what's been the biggest challenge in the digital transformation of traditional finance? And how is this being addressed, and how is QFC enabling this transformation?
Thank you very much. Yeah, the biggest challenges have just been said. You know, it's the regulations, it's keeping up with the pace of technology. So what we have seen as Qatar Financial Center, and together with my colleagues Sheikh Fahad, Sadek and Nasser here, we try to understand what's going on in fintech and how fintech can help banks. So we noticed that I would say 90% of the fintech companies deliver technology to financial institutions. So those companies don't need to be regulated, in our opinion. And only the companies that are involved in let's say, payments and storing money and wallets, etc., those things need to be regulated. So the other things should not. So that's why we came up in QFC with a solution to help those technology providers. And we gave them the opportunity to get a commercial registration on Qatar Financial Center. By the way, Qatar Financial Center is a Qatari, by Qatari law, government institution. The government, the companies on our platform are Qatari companies. Many people seem to forget that, but we are an onshore platform with Qatari companies. So this has helped basically us to attract companies to Qatar and to help Qatar FinTech Hub, who attracts people to their program, so to give them a commercial registration. And yes, the challenge is, I say, is obviously regulations, but the central bank is making excellent progress. And we try to help give them access. And the fact that Dukhan Bank is here and also other banks, they are really discovering the opportunities of those fintech companies. Let's say in Europe, for instance, an average bank works with about 400 fintechs. It's unbelievable, but that's the way to do it. Because those fintech companies develop the innovation much quicker than the departments of the bank can. And if, as the gentleman said next to me, if you pick the right ones, you will thrive as a bank and you will do better and keep your customers.
I think this is where Mr. Ahmed could give us some key insights. How do you think fintechs like yourself effectively partner with the ecosystem, as in banks and regulators and big tech, to better drive innovation and adoption?
First, let's all agree.
Mr. Ahmed, we want to hear everything that you say, so please put the mic very close.
Oh yeah, so let's all of us agree first that the fintech is not a threat, right? And basically the banks are our partners. And the innovation has to be not an optional no more. It should be a necessary thing for a fundamental for a traditional bank to succeed. So working with the banks, what I've seen is the banks are great at storing and lending and stuff. But what we are great at is the customer user experience. So we focus on the engineering side for the banks to give those APIs to our businesses so they can accept payments simply and easier. So the ecosystem itself is growing. In terms of the regulator side, where the PSP license app came out now. And thanks to Qatar FinTech and thanks to QFC for helping payment companies like us and fintechs, the rest of the fintechs in the local market, to understand how to apply and how to get into the sandbox and how to get licensed. And I think we would see a big, huge growth in those areas, and we could see the ecosystem growing in next 5 years.
I think Mr. Narayan may want to comment on that and to elaborate on how Dukhan Bank facilitated SMEs and entrepreneurs under the region's digitization drive, and how can these businesses contribute towards the goal of Qatar, in your opinion?
Yeah, so there again, it's early days for Dukhan Bank, and we are leveraging the partnership with QFT because there are a couple of fintech providers who are seeking to bring the platform into Qatar. And we are exploring that to try and see what kind of a role that we can play in that. Do we become a sort of a banking partner, or are we just going to be helping the fintech run the platform? And it will be like an interface wherein we bring potential investors to the entrepreneurs or the SME who's seeking finance. There are still lots of areas that needs a deeper dive from contracting, from leveraging blockchain for smart contracts, some regulatory approvals. So those are currently being looked at closely. But hopefully next year there could be some joy in the space for leveraging fintech through a bank to fund or finance SMEs and entrepreneurs.
Mr. Henk, how would you describe the adoption rate of fintech services by consumers and businesses in recent years, and what do you think the future holds?
You mean the adoption rate from the banks?
Yes.
It's very promising what Dukhan just said, because it typically starts the adoption rate with banks servicing their customers, partnering with fintech, as Dipsy said, because that is happening already in many of the mature markets and also picking up in our markets. The only thing what we haven't done good enough is to unlock I would say the unbanked, or the people that have difficulties in getting a bank account or getting finance. And let's say in our market, typically these are the workers, or the SMEs or the bakalas, and fintech can help with this financial inclusion, and I would call for a quicker adoption rate by the regulator, by the banks, or maybe even by new institutions, to make sure that we can provide fintech solutions to those unbanked areas. And specifically in the area of SMEs, I think there is so much to be done. And we can also learn from other markets that have done this before. I hope maybe Dukhan Bank can be the first, or some other banks, to really discover this segment, because there is a great need. And if you do it, there is great opportunities.
And Mr. Hassan, how have technology innovations and international collaborations empowered Qatar's fintech offerings?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll just start from the point where Hank stopped. I think collaboration, they play a very important role. And at the FinTech Hub, it was very clear from the onset that we are not building a hub only for the country. It's a global hub where we are going to bring in international fintechs and talents from all over the world. But at the same time, we are going to empower the local entrepreneurs and give them the platform to come and innovate. We started off with benchmarking some of the biggest global hubs in the world, whether it's the SFA in Singapore, or what FCA is doing in the UK or US. And we brought in the learnings from these hubs, things which they have done good, but also things which did not work out for them. And then we kind of tailored them to the local market to ensure that we start our journey at the right foot. In addition to that, in parallel, we were also building alliances. So currently we have alliances with most of the major global hubs. We also work very closely, and we have MOUs with the big techs, with the likes of Microsoft and Amazon, with the payment processors, service providers, universities, legal firms. So I think it's building an ecosystem, which I think Narayan also highlighted, that at the end of the day, fintech provides a marketplace to match the demand side, which is basically the consumers and the banks, with the supply side, which is fintech, who are providing innovative solutions in the market.
Mr. Ahmed, as you know, the financial services industry is transforming at an incredible speed. How do you stay ahead of the curve when it comes to product development, identifying future market demand, and increasing Dipsy's offering?
So we as Dipsy, 70% of our headcount is engineering. So we are more of a data-driven company. So we talk to our users, we focus on what the user wants, and we look into the hard data and the soft data internally. So for example, we had a customer that was on the payment, had a payment gateway on his platform, but the problem was it took him 3 steps for his own customers to accept that payment. So when we looked into that hard data, and we figured out how about we build an embedded checkout for that customer so he could increase his retention and revenue up to like 30 to 40%. We can see that. And as that, it's just only one side of that. So for example, we had customers who never had a website or never had an app, but we focused on giving them something called payment links. So they can accept payments through a payment link through Instagram, WhatsApp, and all other tools out there. So we, as the company, we don't predict what features to build and what the market, but we focus on the data, and that data actually helps us to actually be ahead of our competition.
And speaking of data, what practices is Dukhan Bank using to fortify data privacy and security?
This is a tricky one because data at the end of the day is these days stored digitally. So this can actually quickly divert into cybersecurity. So I'll try and avoid that because that's a much deeper subject and will need lots more time. But in Dukhan Bank, how we do this is we've got fairly robust governance standards. We have our own data policy standards, which very clearly articulates how we actually collect or how do we source customer information, how we use it, how we store it, how we retrieve it, and how we destroy it also. So I think those standards are fairly very clearly articulated as part of our policy. Then how do we actually monitor and run that on a daily basis, on a BAU basis? We do have data quality matrices, which basically tells about how good the quality of our data is, when do we need to kick in a refresh program, when do we need to inject a cleansing initiative to ensure that our data is always refreshed and relevant. Aside from this, we also feel that this area needs to be the entire ecosystem, which means the entire company needs to be always abreast of what is happening. So although banking is all about trust, the ecosystem in which our data sits, we have ensured that it's a zero trust ecosystem. And what I mean by that is any data that moves across the system, it's not faith-based, it is fact-based, i.e. we should be in a position to actually track it and trail it and hone it to a person who has used it. Besides this, I think the standard controls or best practices that we use in the company is user admin rights, user privileges, continuous user awareness training, end use or removable media controls, home working and remote working protocols. What are the areas that you're willing to accept as a risk and permit working? We also constantly monitor our own perimeters to check whether there are any virulent or any unnecessary trespassing which happens to ward off any attacks. And finally, at the end of the day, I think this is a continuous learning game, and we keep our eyes and ears open by looking at the mistakes of others and hope that we don't make it, but continuously learn from it and continuously improving and perfecting our controls. That's what we do.
Absolutely, learning from others' mistakes. In the best case scenario, you're not making the mistakes yourselves, right? Mr. Henk, can you tell us about the opportunities and the benefits that a digital marketplace has in Qatar, and how can this empower trade, finance, and international collaborations?
Yeah, so it's all about international collaboration. I think in general, I think the examples are there. We sign MOUs and partnerships, and we learn from each other. Many of the banks here, there are also international banks. I know that QNB, for instance, has, I think, the major fintech and innovation team in Turkey, Q and beyond. So this is an international game, and we should benefit from it. We are a small country, and we do not only want to be successful in our country, but create this sort of hub. And the hub could be to expand to, let's say, Africa, so we could be a sort of gateway to Africa or to nearby markets. And I think specifically, and that's something I would like to mention since we have Dukhan Bank here as well, I think we have a good starting point to develop Islamic finance more. And Islamic finance is a very old and pure way of financing, but with technology and the interpretation of all kind of products, we can do much more. So I would encourage more Islamic fintech in general and cooperate with the countries nearby. And I think this is an area where Qatar still can take a leading position. And I hope that some banks, maybe Dukhan Bank, does something like what UBS does. So UBS is a very big international organization, and they need a lot of innovation. So what they have done is they set up a fund called UBS Next, and they invested in the companies that they need for their own development. And obviously these fintech companies were successful and others as well. So they make a return and they get the technology. I think those things we should also discover here and learn from that international practice.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure Hassan can tell us a little bit about Qatar FinTech Hub, your work to support fintech founders in Qatar. What more can be done to drive innovation and faster adoption?
Sure, thanks. I think for any fintech or founder or entrepreneur, there are three things which a country can offer. Number one is giving them the local support from the various stakeholders. So for instance, let's say a fintech is coming from Brazil to Qatar. How should I book my tickets? How do I get my visas? Where do I start licensing at QFC? What role does QFTH play? So these kind of things is very important to have a very transparent and clean sort of view on what they need. The second thing any startup or fintech would need is market access. So once they are set up in the country, how do they go about and start doing business development? This is where the banks, the insurance companies, the finance institutions, and other players come in, where we at FinTech Hub help them as Narayan also mentioned, that we bring these fintechs and put them in front of the banks, where they can show their products and services to them, so the banks can collaborate with them. And the third and the most important thing is clarity on the regulations and compliance. This is where QCB comes in. So any fintech, for instance, they're coming into the country, they will invest time and money. They don't want to be in a situation that we have done this, and then they figure out that this area where they work in is not compliant in the country. So I think these are the three things, and as FinTech Hub and QFC, we support fintechs or startups who are coming into the country across these three buckets.
I think we could hear from these panelists for the rest of the afternoon, but unfortunately we do need to wrap up because of time constraints. I just want to give a round of applause and a big thank you to all of our fantastic panelists today. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and your insights. Thank you so much. And could we have a group photo, please? Thank you once again, gentlemen. Thank you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our final panel discussion, panel 3, Nurturing the Startup Ecosystem in Qatar. The startups ecosystem here has been growing and developing at a blistering pace. In this panel, we speak to some of the key proponents of this exciting sector and find out what efforts are being made in order to promote and to nurture this sector, and how are entrepreneurs being provided resources like funds and access and other opportunities so that they are able to accomplish and achieve their goals. We have a fantastic group of panelists. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Ashraf Abu Isa, Chairman of Abu Isa. also joined by Ibrahim Mohammed Hassan, the Executive Director of Finance at the Qatar Development Bank. Just a few moments. We are also joined by Haifa Al Abdallah, Innovation Director at Qatar Science and Technology Park. Mubarak Al Hajri, the co-founder and CEO of Snunu. And our moderator for this panel discussion is Omar Shath, TASMU Platform Manager at the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology.
Assalamu alaikum jami'an. So without further ado, I know that today we have many incubators, accelerators, and funds. But in 2009, we had the first tech incubator and accelerator to be launched in Qatar Science and Technology Park. And I believe we're lucky today to have you, Mrs. Haifa, to be able to speak to us on behalf of the QSTP. And I know there's a lot to talk about, but I would like to zoom in. And if you can share with us any public-private partnerships that you would like to bring to our attention, which you think can be beneficial to the startup ecosystem. They could be existing or maybe even upcoming.
Okay, like from our perspective, any partnership with the industry and government players, with the startups is noteworthy. So it's starting from defining the problems and challenges that the industry faces and the government faces. I'll give you one example. Like Mr. Ashraf is running a huge retail group, and maybe he wants to know which brands are selling best. So he probably can present this, an AI startup can come up with a solution to address that. The same applies to all different sectors. And this is the starting point, defining the challenges that is faced by the industry. Another level is really when working on pilot solutions, allowing startups to pilot their ideas, test their solutions within the industry ecosystem is really essential. A third level is really that this is what we're aiming for, is that the industry becomes a leader. When they run accelerators, they mentor people, they provide fund and investments to good ideas. And these are the things that we aspire to see in the future, inshallah.
Okay, so we understand that basically the industry or the market is your best partner to help the entrepreneurs address real-life challenges. Thank you so much. And now, I know that today we have two flagship initiatives. One is TASMU, leading the digital transformation across the government, and the other is QRDI Council, who are leading research, development, and innovation. I think they are trying to really solidify the efforts. And this is where I would like to ask Mr. Ashraf, as a businessman and as an entrepreneur, what are your thoughts on the future outlook of the innovation and startup ecosystem in Qatar?
Bismillah. Thank you for having me today. I think I'm a big advocate of innovation and also the creative economy initiative. To me, I think as a small country and a small market we are, I think anything to do with the classic industrial activity is not going to be worth it, because it's just a small market. And I always believe in anything you manufacture, you have to at least have 50% of your production sold in your local market. For most of the industries that we have, especially that we are surrounded with with big countries that normally have this critical mass, I think our market should be a little bit careful about investing in any production. And we've seen that, unfortunately, because of the blockade, if we're counting to sell to other countries, sometimes some political issues can come in between. Where the creative and innovative cultural activities is actually easier to cross borders, because you're really exporting an idea or a design or something. So whether it's filmmaking or digital art, or it could be gaming, it could be anything that has to do music, all this is under the innovation flagship. These are items or services or creations that are easy to move across borders, and it's easy for any person to export it. In Qatar, we have a great platform for that. All the groundwork and that normally any country would wish to have, like museums or art galleries or design schools, or incubators and accelerators. All these things are available in Qatar. We just need to enhance and maybe ease the creation of these companies that are in innovation, because sometimes artists, and I dealt with many of them. I had the first art gallery in Qatar, and now I have an auction house. I deal with artists all the time. They are on a planet on their own. You have to respect them and respect what they do, but they are very hard to work with. So you have to make it easy for them to establish in Qatar. You have to make it easy for them to have to live in the ecosystem and contribute to that, because anybody that's going to live in this ecosystem is going to add value. So that's why I feel that we have the platform, we have the ecosystem in Qatar, and the market to be more active in the innovation business in general.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I understand that basically when you say art, music, that maybe the creative industry is not, I would say, still has opportunities, maybe is not tapped enough in Qatar. And this makes me think immediately of NFTs, non-fungible tokens, because they are a great way of moving artwork cross borders, like you mentioned, but having that authenticity untapped, which is excellent.
Yeah, and NFTs today are in the same place where cryptocurrency is. Okay, so we are not sure the future. I'm not going that far. I think for now, you're right. I mean, this is a good example of how you can sell art anywhere. You can. Yeah, it's a good example, but I'm even discussing a step before that. Yeah.
Thank you. So, Mr. Ibrahim, just in time, thank you for coming. And we were talking about the startup ecosystem, and we know, I mean, everyone knows QDB. And the first question that comes to mind, what are the financial schemes available at QDB?
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to disclose I was not late, they started earlier. So as per the invite, this was supposed to start 5:15. Anyways, so thank you for the opportunity, Umar. Thank you for the question. I think I want to start by saying an important point that I said once before that my belief is it takes an ecosystem to build an ecosystem. Now I'll come to say what does QDB offer. But it's not only the role of QDB. It's Abu Isa and their great initiatives and support. It's the private sector, it's the entrepreneurs, the startups, and it's also QSTP and all the other partners. Now, in QDB, we've learned the hard way. So we started this by 5 years ago by saying we'll do everything. By saying I will offer the funding. We started by offering an SME equity platform where we invest in startups. We started by seed, which was around $300,000, $1 million reals. We decided to increase it to 2 million. We decided to increase the cap to 5 million. And we realized this is only dragging. So today, what can the startups benefit from QDB from a financial point of view only? I'm talking about venture capital investment point of view. I have 3 products. One product is called Seed. That's where I invest when you have a proof of concept and some market traction, basic market traction, and I go up to $1 million reals. We have the small ticket, what we call small, which is round A in investment terms, and that's where I can go up to $2 million. And then if a company is growing potentially, and that's where I only co-invest, so there need to be other lead investors, and we can increase our ticket size up to 5 million. Now, what are we trying to do differently? Is we're trying to engage private sector, we're trying to engage other VC funds, and we're trying to engage other capacity building partners as well with us. So today, the way we're doing this is by favorable treatment. So a startup that did not go through any incubation program or any support program gets a lower score, which results in lower investment ticket than a startup that went through a QSTP program, for example. So going through some of these platforms and programs that help you capacity build. The second is we work on co-investment and attracting investors. We do this through different means. We are about to launch a co-investment scheme where we lower our due diligence, let's say, increase our risk appetite in another way. And if you are managing to attract other investors for us to invest. And we're also working with our VC partners that we have historically invested in 7 of them. So 2 of them have already registered in Qatar. They have presence in Qatar, Speed Invest and Iris. And we are working with others also to come establish presence in Qatar in order to facilitate access to finance for startups, not only invest ourselves. I'm sorry for the longer version of the answer, but I hope that addressed it.
Not at all, Blacks. It's great to know that you have so many levels of investment. It means that you are really invested in growing and scaling the local startups. And if I conclude with what you started, is everyone here in the room has a role to play, whether as individuals, because anyone can be an investor, or even as organizations, maybe partnering with QSTP or QDB to offer challenges or opportunities. And now, I don't think I need to introduce Mr. Hamad. Everyone knows Sanunu, and I think when we think Sanunu, we think it's local, it's Qatari, it's successful. And Mr. Hamad, in your own view, what does it take for a startup in Qatar to succeed?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thanks, Umar. Thanks for Forbes Middle East for the invitation and for gathering all of us here to share the knowledge. Basically, it's to succeed in Qatar, there is many definitions of success. Basically, number 1, you need to have a very experienced entrepreneur to execute any good ideas. To have young or fresh graduates and he never been in a startup's life cycle, this is very extremely difficult and very risky. And in the life, the entrepreneurship, let's say, the success factor can be only 15%. While you have, what is the identity of experienced entrepreneur? Mostly he's between 40 and 50, and he came from another startups. He came from a well-educated system. Mostly he's focused on his area of knowledge. So number 1, the entrepreneur, his leadership skill. Then number 2 is about the team he's gathering. Where are they from? Are they young, without any experience? So basically, he needs to make sure they came from exactly the same business model from another example. As example, in our case, we make sure the people who are hired, most of the C-level came from ex-unicorns, all of them actually. So they came from, I wouldn't say the names, but from a very success stories around the world. And the third one, you need to understand that you need to have a good exit. It's either IPO or being acquisitioned. If you are planning for IPO, you need to understand that the investment cycle starting from seed, Series A, Series B, and C, D, all of them should indicate a big growth in your startups. This is very important. And if you want to be acquisition, you need to harm the big dragon there, yeah? He should watch you. He need to open your eyes when he see you. He need to understand that it's either he acquisition you or you're gonna be IPO'd and you're gonna get big cash with high valuation and you're gonna eat him in the end of the road. So this is for me the success factor, but there is one word of success right now in our startups, growth. Don't make the bet cheating your eyes. focus on the growth. Reduce your negative operational margin. Make sure you are profitable in the operations margin. But when it's come to EBITDA, don't worry about it. Focus on the growth. Focus on your revenue. Keep it going up. Make sure when there is valuation in your startups, DCF multiple revenue, it indicates a huge growth in your startups. This is my advice of what is success. This is the definition for me, at least.
Yes, thank you. We always say it's about people, it's not technology, and I think you just emphasized the importance of having that charismatic leader and that exceptional team to actually drive the startup to succeed, to growth, and have a good exit plan. And now going back to Mr. Ashraf. As a successful businessman, and I know that you have many initiatives, namely in Jazz and other entrepreneurship centers. What would be your one advice to aspiring entrepreneurs? Like we just heard from Hamad, what would be your advice?
My biggest advice always to people who want to start a business is to work in a business first. And unfortunately, we have a common mistake in our country that kids want to immediately go to establish companies and implement their ideas very quickly, without really working for the private sector or experiencing working in a private company. And I always invite people who are actually entrepreneurs or have business ideas. I always invite them to work even in our company. I say, come, we will incubate you or employ you for the first 2-3 years to understand what it is to be an entrepreneur or a private business, because you see a common mistake repeated over and over from most of the entrepreneurs and then it's a learning cycle that they have to go through. We can make it much easier for them without wasting and losing money. They get surprised sometimes with the reality of the market, and every market is not easy. Every market has its ins and outs, and it's better that they experience that first, working for a private entity, so they can understand how to start their own.
Would you say it's experience in general, or for example, if I want to start a travel agency, do I have to work for a travel agency?
Yes. Yes, I mean, it will shorten your learning curve by so much.
Thank you, Omar. I just wanted to add 2 things. The first is just to second what my brother Ashraf was saying, is there is a saying that says the only source of knowledge is experience. So a common mistake is people undermine the importance of experience for startups, and that's a common mistake that we see them fall in many times. And to say basically what I heard Hamad just say is what will it take a startup to succeed, not in Qatar only, but for a tech startup to succeed, it will take you an arm and a leg. This is not an easy journey. This is a journey you should be well equipped, you should have the team around you, and you should be ready to face the challenges. It's not going to be a walk in the park. It will be frustration. There will be so many frustration. There will be so many hiccups. There will be so many challenges to overcome, but they'll only make you stronger.
So, Mr. Ibrahim, they always say that capital is fearful. And yes, maybe QDB is offering its own funds, but we know that in Qatar we have many businessmen, the likes of Mr. Ashraf. So do you have any mentorship programs to investors?
Mentorship for investors, not for startups.
Yes.
See, we're about to start something. We're starting an angel investment program where we are planning in collaboration with QSTP, and maybe they can also shed some light on, offer some trainings and mentorship for investors, how to choose your startup, how to negotiate terms, etc., etc., etc. Because one of the things we have realized is, as I said, we learn on the go. QDB started this 4 or 5 years ago. It's new to us. We have been a lending institute, and we learn on the go. So we realized we have been doing a lot of trainings for startups, but not much for the investors. So as a matter of fact, investors are afraid, like any human, capital is scared of the unknown. So they need to know that they are making an educated decision, they need to negotiate their terms and conditions, and we cannot expect everyone to have business knowledge like Abu Isa and be able to make his own decisions. There are many people who want to be angel investors, who want to invest in technology, but they're afraid. And once they learn, hopefully once we launch our new initiatives, we are hoping that there will be more private capital investments into these startups.
Inshallah, we would love to see that, and hopefully your angel network will grow. And to build on that, I will go back to Mrs. Haifa. Do you as a QSTP have any services to investors? Because yes, okay, maybe I have been mentored by QDB, I want to invest, but I need to do some due diligence, some research. Do you have any such services at QSTP?
We have 2 key programs to support young startups in QSTP. The Incubation Center, this is where we give room for young startups to test their ideas. At this stage, what we focus on is really choosing the right team. This is a stage where we actually give the people the opportunity to try their ideas. We don't focus on the idea itself, but we just give them a room and a shelter to grow and think and reach out to people. So this is the stage 1. Another level that we have is the Technology Venture Fund, and this is where we actually put money on the table. And of course, like we have a capable team that do proper due diligence for any investment opportunity here in Qatar at the seed stage. And I think this is like, as a government entity together with QDB, we're trying to open that opportunity, and we are welcoming private investors. We welcome co-investing opportunities. And I think this is very important for us, that we engage other people, angel investors, like the private sector as well, in all the programs that we do. And I think as the ecosystem in Qatar is growing, and I think that kind of collaboration and engagement is happening in a natural way.
And to elaborate more on your fund program, do you take equity, or is it an equity-free program?
We call it like a convertible note. This is like the system of our technology venture fund. I'm not the expert in finance. I'm leading the incubation side. I'm a people's person. I don't like money, by the way. So that's what I am.
Well, money is sitting next to you.
Yeah, the money is with Ibrahim there, just like.
Okay, now Mr. Hamad, now that you have succeeded, your eyes are set on growth, and I'm sure you have an exit strategy in mind. Can you tell us, or maybe you're comfortable sharing, what was your growth strategy? Like maybe Ahmed from Dipsy can learn from you.
Okay, thanks for this question. First, I wouldn't call ourselves success yet. For us, success is IPO. So this is our main goal. Our success is to be a regional player or maybe international player. But let's talk about basically how we grow by using marketing. So number 1, you have to understand your business model. You need to understand what kind. You are not selling an idea. You are selling a solutions of a problems. And basically, maybe your solution doesn't work for your customer segments. So you have to understand what is the problem, what is the solutions, who is your customer segments, what channel are you using to reach them. The business model is very important. The number 2, you have to make sure the product, the customer, and the time are meeting all in the same point exactly in the same platform. So you need to make sure this is happening, this chemist. And the third point is, how can you use the marketing economics as example, conversion rate, retention rate, number of clicks, to see the acceptance of your product. Maybe the customer doesn't like your product. Maybe you are targeting the wrong customer. So one of our competitive edge of our growth is our marketing. Yes, we hear about innovations and business model, but now there is innovations in marketing. Maybe you saw some pizza flying in Lucille or burger flying in Sheraton. This is creativity. This is innovation in marketing. Innovation marketing is the key of growth. So understanding what is your retention, what is the conversion, this is very important. And the beauty about all this information, you go back to your product, because after all, we have our R&D. We are developing a technology product. We understand what customer wants, what does he need, and we keep developing. And here we have actually 40% of our working capital is being spent on research and development. And we keep developing ourselves monthly basis based on the interaction by using marketing intelligence and understand the customer. And later, the beauty about it, when you reach the satisfaction with the customer, the revolutions of your business model will start. The growth usually starts in 3 main verticals. It's either vertical, horizontal, or geography. So you can start enhancing your business model and have access to more customers with more solution for different problems. And of course, the future for us, we are looking to be a super app that can solve everything that customer want to be delivered at his doorsteps. But this is in the future.
Thank you. So if I rephrase that, basically, to grow, you need to be agile. And to be agile, you need to have insights, whether it's on your own systems, your processes, your clients, could be your people, or even doing research and development to have insights on the future and the outlook of the market. I have one more question, but I don't want to bore you with my questions, so I'm going to open the floor to the audience, our lovely audience here. Please let us know if you have any questions to any of our great panelists here. Well, until you raise your hand, I have one more question for the panelists. There's one I can see.
Thank you for the use of the mic from the QDB colleague. Thanks very much. My name is Mohammed Abian. I'm from QSTP. A question for the CEO of Sununu. I think we agree that having experienced entrepreneurs, experienced founders is very important. But in our ecosystem with tech startups, there's a degree of impatience. People want to create. We don't necessarily have the 10 or 15 years to build a very strong ecosystem. Silicon Valley took 70 years to build. So my question is, to what degree can you import talent that has entrepreneurship experience to your team? And is that a potential strategy for success? Thank you.
Thank you. This is amazing questions because it's it's the secret to unlock the entrepreneurship of any country. As example, if you ask me what is the success of the entrepreneurship ecosystem in USA, mainly it's because I would say specifically PayPal. The PayPal exit made a huge change in the whole ecosystem of USA. There is what you call PayPal Mafia, if you hear about it. Elon Musk came out of that one, the founder of LinkedIn, the founder of YouTube. In our region, we have Kareem exit. Without Kareem exit and the people who lived inside Kareem and see that what does it take you to build a startups until it's unicorn? There is 175 startups came out of Kareem. 2 of them became unicorns already, 2 of them. The last one, Sifwell, which with Mustafa Qandil, he made $1.5 valuations. And basically, it's not easy a job. So in Economic Pulse and Qatar TV, I have this question. I said, I think Qatar need to have one major success story. We don't need to have 30, 40, 50 startups. How about we have one huge success startup in the whole country? You're going to see huge generation will come out of them. All of them will build the successful startups. But yeah, our model was very tough. There was a learning curve. Myself, I have long experience as well, but I have to import almost 50% of the team. The customer service director came from Rappi, a unicorn from Colombia. I have the whole creative team came from Yandex from Russia. I have many people came from Foodpanda, Kareem, etc. It's all of them came from ex-unicorns. So the local talents, I only rely on a potential and smart students came from universities. I have as example, even specific name, I have one guy, his name is Mohammed Abdu. He's graduate from Qatar University. He joined us, he was smart. He learned fast, but now he's in Amazon, by the way. The other case, I have almost 23 from Carnegie Mellon. All of them was amazing. They don't have experience, so I make sure they are, matchmaking with the experienced team I have. So yeah, to bring experience from outside, this is our case here in Qatar, to import from outside and to make them have this to meet this smart, young potential. The good thing that education system in Qatar is very good. I can tell you there is around 50 graduates from Carnegie Mellon, all of them is tech. We have soon Doha Technology, we have Qatar University, we have Northwestern, one of the students here actually taking picture. This is our PR from Sununu. So we have many people from our education system. How he can make them come together. Maybe in 2 or 3 years in our case, we're going to start exiting people that actually be a successful entrepreneur. However, we cannot ask the startups now, shut down your business, yeah? But at least learn from another startups and recruit people who've been exactly similar to your business model somewhere else. Don't worry, spend some money. Your capital is the people. So this is my answer.
And to add or build on his answer to your question, do I always have to hire from outside? I think he just mentioned that he has 23 Carnegie Mellon graduates who are fresh graduates, which means you can build the talents here. I mean, I think one of the challenges fresh graduates face is that you need experience to go here or there or there. But now he just told us and proved that fresh graduates are worthy of the developing and they can really help you grow. Thank you.
Hello, sorry, I have a question. So I'm from Forbes, my name is Daniel. The question is around the impediments from a regulatory perspective. How important are those in accelerating the startup ecosystem? Because if, for example, let's say be those fintechs or any other startups that need regulatory approvals, how is Qatar right now working from a regulatory perspective, for example, the central bank or others, in accelerating this regulatory approval process? Because we've heard this is one of the core points which need to be addressed in the country. So how are we taking that up?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Mrs. Haifa has an answer, even though this is not within my domain, but I can tell you one thing I know, that a QRDI Council is mandated by the Emir to introduce innovation at different levels. Innovation to governments, innovation to companies, and innovation to SMEs. So they are really trying to do the change management in terms of basically training the organizations that innovation has value, that you should do innovation. And I think Mrs. Haifa mentioned about reaching out to organizations for challenges.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we understand there are certain challenges in the regularity framework, and I think the whole government is working on identifying and solving these issues. And as you mentioned, Amar, it's very true that the RDI Council is mandated to work on the regulatory framework in Qatar to support more of entrepreneurship and talent development.
I'd like to add something. We have to also remember that in Qatar we have competition. We have the neighboring countries are all trying to do the same thing. So we have to always find our niche and also improve our regulatory system to be able to attract people from the region or from international. So we have to be quick and we have to act in a global mindset, I would say.
If you allow me to add, I always argue that yes, we have startups, and there is a perception, I think it's a wrong perception, but there is a perception that if I bring it from outside, they can do it better. But let me tell you this, if we don't give opportunities to local startups, they will always remain small. They only grow with opportunities. Maybe they make mistakes, but again, is our goal to grow the economy, or just to bring talents from outside or startups from outside, and to grow someone else's economy?
Yeah, I want to say, I don't think we directly answered your question, because I think we talked about the other 3 pillars more than the 1 pillar you mentioned. You asked about regulation, we've talked about procurement, access to market, we've talked about talent, and we've talked about other supports. Now, there is no one size fits all, and there is no silver bullet, and there is no one solution. QRDI was mentioned, and yes, QRDI is doing all they can to accelerate the regulation. There is a SteerCo that has QRDI and some other stakeholders in the country that regularly looks at what needs to be improved. I'll pick one example you talked about, which is fintech. Now in fintech, you said something that's probably accurate and not accurate at the same time. Not all fintechs are regulated. So there are many fintech solutions that are not regulated. And this is what we identified as a quick win. So we have a fintech hub in Qatar. QDB is one of the members. QCB, Qatar Central Bank, is also another member. Qatar Financial Center, QSTP, we're all members there. And we sat there and we brainstormed about it. And what we did is we decided a sandbox was just launched for fintech, but that's going to take time. Launching the sandbox did take time, and companies to go through the sandbox and graduate from it is taking time. And then we decided there's also the non-regulated. And the non-regulated sectors were left for Qatar Financial Center to have more agile and more flexible regulatory framework. And this is where we are focusing. So if you go to, we are now running our third cohort of a fintech incubator accelerator, and you would see that the main focus are not those that need to go through the sandbox, because by cohort 1 and 2 sandbox was not there. It was only launched when we were starting our cohort 3. It's those that do not really need central bank regulation. They're still fintech. They will contribute to the ecosystem. They will help us build an ecosystem. I'm just getting around the regulation.
Can you hear me now? Yes, I think that's quite interesting and that's quite encouraging for all of them. And I do believe, I agree with you that there are, of course, certain fintechs that need regulations and certain do not need. And it's good to know that those sandbox with QCB and QDB and the other members is picking up. So I've got just one last question for Mr. Abuis as well, because we've got a lot of, I would say, the people watching the live stream with us as well from Qatar and of course outside as well. And you being an entrepreneur yourself and being a savvy investor as well, what would you give, like, in terms of piece of advices, 3 or top 2 piece of advices that we would want to give to entrepreneurs or startups that are looking to raise funds and are looking to grow and expand beyond Qatar or in Qatar as well? What would be your 2 top advices to them to focus on initially to raise that?
If you allow me 1 second to spin off your question, I understand that you want to get advice, but let me rephrase your question a bit and tell me if it does fulfill. And in my opinion, this is a question that can be addressed not just to Mr. Ashraf, but to everyone, whether as individuals, because there could be other investors, or even as organizations who are providing investment like QSTP and QDB. Basically, obviously when you decide to invest in a startup, you do diligence and research. But before you even do that due diligence and research, there is a decision making that, okay, this startup is worth due diligence. And I believe any entrepreneur would be interested to know what is your maybe personal agenda, or what is the criteria that helps you decide that this, I will take this further. Not necessarily invest, but what are the factors that make you decide?
For me, a few things normally I look at when I want to invest in a startup. First, is it a real niche? Is it a business that does not exist, or very few, or not served, or is it solving a problem, solving a real problem? That's always very important. And second, is it something that will benefit my group as a holding? Is it something that because we have maybe 30 active companies within our group, so does it fit anywhere? And the third thing is that can I add value to this? Angel investors looked at normally as angel, like, you know, they're gonna throw their money away and be angels about it. No, it's not that. Angels are meaning that you should give your startup not only funding, but also help, contacts, guidance, and I think that's what it's meant by being an angel investor. So can I add value to him? Is me investing in him meaning, or in her, is something that not only good for him but also good for the company, and can I really make a difference? This is important. This is the things that I look at normally.
Maybe Mrs. Haifa is more with the incubation. I don't know if Mr. Ibrahim, would you like to tell us what What makes you decide that this startup is maybe worth actually taking further to study?
Yeah, I think one of the important elements, as I mentioned, is really making sure that you invest in people, not in ideas, and you make sure that you choose the right people. Because at the end of the day, creating a technology startup in particular needs a lot of skin, and it's not an easy thing. And I've seen it across the year, and I really admire the people who've done it. It's not an easy thing. So we make sure to choose the right people who are going to persevere all the challenges, because it's not easy. There will be competition along the way. There will be challenges coming from outside. We've seen startups suffering from the COVID situation, for example, suffering from blockade, different things that happens. So you need really to make sure that you choose the right people that will persevere through all the challenges that they face.
Mr. Ibrahim?
See, giving away my mic was on purpose, but I see it keeps coming back. Omar, I think I will second what Haifa was saying, because an A idea with B team goes nowhere, but a B idea with an A team reaches far. And if we look at history, look at the most successful startups, you realize the idea was very simple. And if you actually read in history, you will see that it was tried multiple times by different teams. Do you know how many tried to do Uber in the world? But one succeeded. So they succeeded because they had the right team. Now, what I look at is, it depends on the stage of the company. If you're coming to me at very early stage, then it's the idea, it's the novelty of the idea, like Ashraf was saying. It's also the team and the team experience. And when I say the team experience, it doesn't necessarily mean only the founder. Like Hamid is on the path of success. Maybe he decided to call himself not a success yet, and that's one of my advices for the startups, is to be humble and be inspired and always know there's more. But he didn't think he'll do everything on his own. Everything, I was just saying that it's not only QDB, it will take an ecosystem to, it applies at everything. When you are a founder, don't think that you'll be able to do everything with your own hands. Bring people who will help you deliver your vision. It will cost you, but it will get you further. So I think, and not only for employees, like sometimes you will have to outsource a piece of your operations. You don't have to do everything your own. So someone who comes to us, who gives me at least a vision, because there is a supply chain that's saying, I'm not going to do the whole supply chain, but here is what my idea is, here is the problem I'm solving, here is how I will insert myself within the supply chain to benefit from the existing suppliers and the existing end users and the existing infrastructure. This for me, it tells you that the team is good because they know what they're doing, which is something we'll also look at. But it also gives you the comfort as an investor. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I am using the existing infrastructure to grow.
I just want to add one more thing. يعني, mashallah, my colleagues already covered all this point of view of investor. If they're going to invest in the entrepreneur. Myself, I'm a small angel investor. Of course, not like Mr. Ashraf, not like my QDB. But there is only one point I'm making sure this entrepreneur have it. The execution's capabilities. Can he execute or not? If he cannot, if it's about ideas, I believe everyone in this room have 20, 30 ideas in his head. We're not going to invest in all of them. Yeah, they need like billions. But if you have the execution's capabilities, and mostly you have the knowledge of these ideas, I will invest in you.
Thank you. So I think we can conclude by saying it's really, I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about the people, their ability to adapt, to cope with different challenges, different situations, and obviously they need to know what they're doing. Thank you so much for being here on the panel. You have one more question? Please go ahead.
One question. So this is Yaqub Sari from Magellan Payments, QFC. So actually, I would like to ask to all of you, but specifically for the Sununu, to Mr. Fahad Mubarak. Like, as you know, the InsurTech, RegTech, FinTechs, we all start in the startup, and then we go to seed A, seed B. We already passed the startup age, but now in Qatar, we are a foreign company, and we are in the, let's say, we skipped the startup stage. and we all know that Sununu, Uber, the other fintech or other fintech companies also start in the really startup stage. So I would like to ask if Sununu, even their startups, or if they going to seed B levels, if the Sununu is open for the collaboration for the startup or for the middle companies. So I would like to ask that collaboration, because as Mr. Hamad Mubarak just mentioned, that the market needs a super app for the solving the problems. So actually what we done is we created a super app for the merchants. So each merchant, we are converting each merchant to a fintech company. So we believe that every company will be a fintech company in the future. So we'll build a super app for each merchant to become a fintech company by their own. So we just wanted to know that how is the vision of the Sununu. So, and like if they are open for the collaboration with the, let's say, mostly with startups or not. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. Definitely, we are very interested. Mostly, we have a mandate that we need to build an ecosystem of startups from Qatar. This is very important for us. Rakuten from Japan, they just acquisition 12 months ago an insurance company for $250 million. Why? Because they have users base and they need to insure most of their e-commerce product. To partner with the InsurTech, this makes sense, of course, definitely for us. And basically in fintech field, you need to partner with the three major industry leaders. It's either e-commerce, bank, or telecom. So when we became, and of course now we are going to Series B, and the revolving of our business model will continue growing. Definitely you are interested in this sort of business model, and really I wish you all the best.
I think again, I would say if I want to invest in a fintech or somebody post startup, it has to add value to my group, to my companies, and I have to be able to add value to that company.
So it has to be a two-way relationship. Thank you so much for listening patiently, and thank you to the lovely panelists. Please, let's take a group photo.
Of our panel discussions, and for all of your insights and your valuable contributions, and for your time today. We really do appreciate it. Now, we've had 3 very interesting and intense discussions, and we'd like to thank all of our speakers for joining us once again for all of these sessions. However, we still have the most exciting part of the day yet to come. We will take a 15-minute break before we regroup for the Qatar Awards ceremony. See you in 15 minutes.